Hello, everyone. I am your co-host, Deacon Adam, for Stories at Work.
No, I'm the co-host.
I'm the host.
Father Matthew, you're the host.
I know. I keep forgetting that I'm the host.
I'm the goose to your maverick.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Just don't eject me prematurely.
Because I'm getting a sequel.
That's right.
If that's the case. So, do you have any updates?
I do not have any updates. Although I think we should start with prayer.
Oh, yes. Let's start there first.
Okay. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. O heavenly King, O Comforter, the Spirit of truth, who art in all places and fillest all things, treasury of good things and giver of life, come and abide in us, cleanse us from every stain, and save our souls, O good one. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so I guess the only two updates I really have right now are if you missed the parenting conference that we did, I moderated that for the St. Athanasius Academy. You can find that, a link to it in the recordings by going to saaot.edu. If you've been there before, I'll post it in the comment section. And then this coming Saturday, so in 2 days, we have an outreach conference online hosted by the Antiochian Department of Missions and Evangelism. Outreach specifically, not evangelism. There is a difference.
What is the difference in 30 seconds?
Evangelism is the verbal expression of the gospel, and outreach is the nonverbal, unconditional expression of the gospel. So all the good works that we do, that's outreach, like homeless ministry, soup kitchens, that kind of stuff. We do it unconditionally, and we do those good works because we are Christians. And then evangelism would be the verbal side of living the gospel that you may or may not, do with someone.
Gotcha.
Okay. Just because you're at a soup kitchen doesn't mean you got to tell everyone about the faith in Jesus. But you might find an opportunity to talk to one or two at some point in your relationship to that. So that's the difference. And so we're focused on outreach specifically during 2020. This is a different and harder year for a lot of youth groups. We're actually opening with service works, service projects for youth and young adults. And they've had to some of them had to cancel a lot of what they're doing, or they're having a hard time finding things. So I'm pretty excited to hear from the Basilica in Livonia about what they do each year and then how this year has been different.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah. So that's the update. I'll share a link to that, but if you go to missionsandevangelism.com, you can sign up for the conference. I request that you register so that we are prepared with numbers, have an idea of who's coming, and you get updates and you get little, pieces of information like when it's going to be posted to YouTube, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and just a follow-up to the parenting conference. I watched the whole thing when it happened, and it was excellent.
Yes, it was.
Every speaker had a pearl of wisdom to offer for parents of all varieties who have kids of all ages. And then Dr. Philip Mamalakis summed it all up. He watched the whole thing and commented on everything that everybody else said, which was amazing.
It was amazing. He watched the whole thing and took notes.
Yeah. It was superb. So a very well done virtual conference, and it's one that's very easy to watch in pieces and parts. You can watch one speaker at a time.
Yes.
As you have time. You don't have to digest all 4 hours in one sitting.
Unless you don't have anything else to do because of COVID and you're just going to sit at home on the couch, watch the whole 4 hours. But yes, each presentation is a separate episode on YouTube, the YouTube channel for St. Athanasius Academy. So you can pick and choose if you feel like some are more relatable than others. And actually, it's funny, that relates to today's guest and today's topic.
Okay.
So that's our segue. Talk about a segue. So let's bring on our today's guest, Lindsey.
Hi there.
Hi, welcome back, Lindsey.
Thank you. Good to be here. It's good to be with you all.
This is at least your second time. Is it third?
It is my second time. No, not my third.
Okay.
And the last time she was on, I asked her to compare you, Deacon Adam, to a character from literature, and she compared you to Donkey from Shrek. And that answer in and of itself convinced me to enroll my son in her St. Athanasius middle school English class. And you know what? She's killing it. Like, my son's doing really well. English has always been a tough subject for him, and he's doing great this year and really enjoys the class with Mrs. Birdsall. So I just want you to know, Lindsey, that was the deciding factor. I said, okay, I'm in on this teacher.
You signed up like right after that,
right? Like the same day.
Yeah.
My son was enrolled the same day.
So that's not actually. So I know we interviewed you for teaching English at St. Athanasius. Yeah. That's not your full-time job.
It is not my full-time job. Yes, I work as the director of youth and young adult ministries at St. in Louisville, Kentucky. So my training and my background is in teaching, but towards the end of my teaching career, I really found myself gravitating towards smaller schools where I could get to know parents and families better and bring my Christian faith also into the classroom. And I was delighted to be able to make the transition to a church where I could support families. So I think school and home are something that I really love, fully being integrated, you know, regardless of what your situation is, whether you're a homeschooler or not. But to have those two things integrated, I think is really great for families. And I'm happy to support people in Louisville doing that.
Yeah, you came up with a pretty interesting title for our topic because we were going back and I was noticing some of the stuff you're doing at St. Michael. And I think the topic was building up parish families during the pandemic, which has been like a very isolating time the last several months. Yeah,
it's been a strange time. It's been an isolating time. And, you know, God is with us and he's fully present. But at the same time, I think we are in a place where there's definitely pressure on marriages, pressure on families. And what we're doing right now is a little bit unnatural. And for that reason, I would say we need supernatural grace to get through it. So I've been trying to do that at St. Michael's and with God's help, I think I've had some success. You know, why this is a strange time and I really miss seeing my parish family. I also think for ministry to families, it's been pretty fertile time because we are all so humbled by this situation that we are in. And I think it's just a lot of people to really think and pray about the way their lives are set up, the way that their relationships are going. So one thing that I've been doing is just actually sharing a lot of the resources that have helped me in my life and have helped some of the families that I've been working with. Deacon Adam was kind of tipped off on this interview because he saw that I was sending out some newsletters. And I have to say, I don't do this all that often. I would say I'm doing it like 3 times a year at my church, and I'm a little late sending out an official newsletter right now. But I have really been benefiting from the content that's been put out by the Department of Missions and Evangelism, by Ancient Faith Radio, and various publications. And I've been happy to pass those on to families, whether it's through the newsletter, whether it's through Marco Polo. Actually, there's an app called Marco Polo that I've been using for ministry. Have you guys heard of this one? So I feel like
I haven't heard anybody use it for ministry.
Yeah. Well, basically it's just a way to have conversations with people that are deep, but might not necessarily be, I think for a busy mom, for instance, I do a lot of talking with moms about what's going on in their household. So what you do is you leave video messages for your friends. And if the kid's sleeping and you have a moment of quiet to actually, talk about things that you don't want little ears hearing, you can leave that video message on Marco Polo and you kind of can communicate back and forth that way. So it's flexible for parents who don't have privacy, and it's a lot more intimate than texting. So.
I'm aware of it, but you're kind of blowing my mind here because it became very popular at my church among the Antiochian women.
Okay.
And so whenever it got sometime over the summer, I just constantly would hear these like snippets, and I'm like, Is that TikTok? Like, what are you doing? Like, it's quite confusing if you're not sure what's happening with Marco Polo.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like sending video text messages that can be kind of long. And if you're talking slowly and your friends are talking slowly, you can also put them in double time. So you get kind of the information a little bit more quickly. I encourage my friends to do that sometimes if I'm processing things pretty slowly.
So are you doing this with your teenagers?
I have one teenager that I've done it with. Yeah, I definitely ask the parents' permission beforehand, since that's kind of a private thing to be doing. But yeah, I did. I was in touch with one teenager over the summer through Marco Polo. Okay,
and then young adults. What's that like?
So our young adults are, doing okay, I guess. Everybody's trying. What we have been up to right now is taking periodic hikes, actually, out south of Lexington. We teamed up with St. Athanasius Orthodox Church, and we have been to the Pinnacles in Berea. So we've done these amazing hikes, and we've been able to spread out and stay safe that way. And we've had Vespers on the mountaintop. And
I'm glad you shared that. Like, you guys are really, like, when you get up there, this is like an event. I've seen the photos with you and Father Terry, and there's like a crowd, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it's been really, really joyful to do that. Just get out and create, God's creation. And I have to admit, like, before, I kind of had a hard time convincing people to do that with me. The idea is a lot more attractive to people, and thank God, I think there are some good things that are coming out of this, just an appreciation for the simple things, the simple gifts. So we've gone up there, we've had Vespers, and then after the last Vespers service, we decided to kind of take back Pascha by singing a whole bunch of Paschal hymns. We actually sang Vlad Morrison's composition.
Oh, do we have a glitch?
Yeah.
I think she was about to say she was going to sing the Appalachian Christ is Risen, which I love that composition. Have you heard it?
I have heard it. There was a family visiting our church at our Pascha feast a few years ago who had learned it, and they sang it. Yeah. It's pretty cool. But,
well, and there's a video there. You can find several recordings of it on YouTube, but there's an Orthodox choir up in the New York area called Spirit of Orthodoxy, and they have one of my favorite versions on YouTube.
Yeah. So,
okay. So she'll be
she'll be back.
She'll be back soon. But so I'll share in the meantime what I noticed. She shared this. That she's been sending out a newsletter and to the teens and maybe the young adults as well, and that it's been the result has been meaningful conversations. And I kind of feel like a newsletter is almost like an archaic thing at this point. I've kind of moved on from newsletters and the idea of newsletters, and we've even considered the idea of a newsletter at St. Athanasius. So I was like, I don't really think people need that anymore. And then I saw that she's like having a great time with this. I was like, okay, so I was wrong, and now I'm very curious what's going on with that. So she's back.
Great.
We talked about you.
Oh no.
I assumed you were talking about the Appalachian Christ is Risen.
Yes, Vlad Morrison.
Yes. I'm working on mine too now.
Okay, good, buddy. He is watching a National Geographic episode about King Tut.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Tutankhamun, he says. All right.
Is it like is that Night at the Museum, that kind of National Geographic? The movie Night at the Museum.
Which one is? There's two of them, right? There's two of those movies.
Yeah.
Those movies, correct? Yeah. That's where we are. Okay, Lindsey. So I was explaining why I first was interested in what you were doing, because it's funny that I had just gotten to the point where I was like, no one cares about newsletters. Nobody reads about newsletters. I had actually convinced my boss, like, they're a complete waste of time. And then I saw you post about your newsletter. So it's like, okay, so I'm completely wrong about newsletters. And
I would say that Deacon Adam, they get clicked a little bit. They don't get clicked. Like it's been helpful feedback for me to see what gets clicked and what doesn't and stuff like that on Constant Contact. I can't say that they're the most effective thing. That's why I only do it a few times a year. Mm-hmm. But what has been nice is when I share a resource, it's just kind of, there's a record of it and I can send it to people over and over again. So there are, podcasts like that I have found myself, podcasts or resources. I found myself sending them to parents over and over again. One of those, for instance, is actually, this is a secular website called screenagers.com. It's run by a physician, and she just has a lot of really amazing articles about the impact of screen time on teenagers. They're very scientific and information-packed, but I find them also very accessible as well. They're not overwhelming for somebody to read. So it has that kind of informational stuff. And then there's also a really, really practical parenting aspect where she actually has like sample contracts, screen time contracts that you could download and you would edit them for your own purposes. Maybe you wouldn't agree 100% with what they have. But I think it just really has helped some parents think a little bit more intentionally about how they're going to introduce a cell phone to their child. So that's been great. There's one podcast on Ancient Faith Radio that I have sent to a handful of families. It's an old one actually, but it's an oldie but a goodie. Dr. Philip Mamalakis's Talking to Your Children About Homosexuality has been a great one. He's just so full of compassion and love and wisdom and truth. So yeah, newsletters have been kind of good for that. I don't get a ton of clicks. I think one of the main reasons you don't is because a lot of the times when you're in your email inbox, you're just trying to get through things quickly, So yeah, that's my thought about newsletters, Deacon Adam. Not a complete waste of time, but at least you can see who clicked and stuff and follow up with them.
Well, it reminded me of some training I had years ago back when I was doing marketing. And they were saying, don't find one thing that does everything you need. You're going to find 20 things that do 20 different needs. And so the newsletter kind of fills a little bit of the gap. And then this resource fills a little bit more of the gap. And so it's a good reminder that, that variety of ways that we're engaging, communicating, sharing, that you're reaching. I think what you talked about is like you're reaching some people through email, some people through a newsletter, some people. Yeah. It's a variety of ways that we're engaging.
Right. Yeah. And it's nice. I mean, with a lot of with Constant Contact, you can tell who's reading your emails. You can tell who's clicking the links. And yeah, I have been able to just get to the point where I can tell which of my parishioners like email are email only people, which of them are social media only people, which of them are text only people, and which one of them are kind of a combination of all those three things.
I want to go back and circle around. I just shared the link to Dr. Mamalakis's how parents should talk to their children about homosexuality. This was mind-blowing to me because I didn't realize I was skipping a lot of other conversations that needed to happen first. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, such an eye-opener. And actually, I calmed down, was like, okay, I don't have to jump right into it. Even if they ask about it. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about some other things first before we get to that topic.
Yes. I found myself in that situation this summer. This is actually something else that is maybe a whole nother conversation. But, I live in Louisville, and since the spring, especially, issues of racial reconciliation are on the forefront in our community. And my son was hearing bits and pieces, and I realized at that time that I had wished that I had started some of these conversations with him earlier, and I didn't really want our starting point, to be discussions about conflict and tension. So at that point, I did kind of dial back a little bit, but I did start. I mean, I looked at my library at home, the books that we were reading, and I realized that I had very few Black kids in there, very few images of African Americans. So I bought a few things and added a little color to our library. I also bought some books that were pretty explicit about just building a foundation of love and appreciation for people of all kinds. So there's one, for instance, called The Colors of Us that I loved reading. And it literally it has a bunch of beautiful like illustrations, people with different color skins. And the English teacher in me loved it too, because it was kind of poetic. It said like, oh, this person's skin is the color of coffee, and this person's skin is the color of buttermilk, or, whatever. And so I started from that foundation, more of appreciation, so I could, get that in before we started talking a little bit more about the conflict. So I think you're right. It's beautiful to hear from people like Dr. Philip Mamalakis, to hear from the people at the Fellowship of St. Moses the Black, because it can totally deepen your perspective.
I love hearing about that book, because as a kid, I struggled with the concept of black and white. Because if you're learning your colors, you're like, but I'm not white and he's not black, and I don't get it.
I know.
Like, it doesn't, that's hard on a kid. Like, to be, and if we could be actually, it's probably easier to just be a bit more honest about the actual colors that we are.
Oh yeah. Well, children, I don't know if you've heard, but there's this psychological study with children. You ask them to draw a tree, and when they're really little, they really kind of try to draw it authentically with all the twigginess and the lack of symmetry and stuff. But then at some point they hit like first grade, second grade, and it's these like two lines straight up with a circle, and it kind of looks like a Q-tip, and we don't really look like that, Yeah. So it's kind of sad. We do get conditioned into seeing people in ways that are not, I think, really reflecting the complexity of God's beauty and plan. So,
I'm curious about, how long have you been the director of youth and young adult ministries at St. Michael?
I'm coming up on 3 years.
3 years. Okay. So someone said to me once, and I'm still, I believe it, but I'm still trying to figure it out, like what it looks like. But someone said to me, the best youth ministry is a good parenting ministry. Like, and I love that you're addressing the family.
Yeah, I definitely try to do that. It's where my heart is. I've thought very carefully about parenting. I've read kind of an embarrassing amount of parenting books. And I am a little older for a youth director. It's my 35th birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Well, then Matthew might sing. You don't want to hear me sing. That would not be a good birthday.
It's not the same on camera. So consider yourself sung to, all right? Just okay. we'll be better off.
Yeah, I just think since even before I came, one of my passions was getting people in a place where they were engaging the teachers at their kids' school. They were engaging their church, and they were engaging their family, and doing all of those things together. So I'm trying to continue that on here. I'm not like, where did you come up with the idea? Is it because you're a teacher that helping the parents connect with the teachers at school? So it was a couple things, actually. So the parish I attended in Boston was Holy Resurrection Orthodox Church, which is in the Bulgarian Archdiocese, actually, and they have a school there. And Father Patrick Tischel there has a really well-articulated philosophy of that sort of thing. And I met him, actually, when I was a little bit before I was engaged to my husband, and I was teaching public school in New York City. And I just kind of had this, I was sheltered in many ways before that. And I really had to look at the world and understand a little bit more about how I was going to engage the world from a foundation of Christ's love and truth. So yeah, I would say I'm carrying on that legacy. Thank God.
That's a very interesting idea. I like that. Father Matthew, I'm asking all the questions. I hope I'm not like crowding you out. I don't know if you have something to ask, but I probably have 10 more I'm ready with.
It's good. Are you posting your newsletter on your parish website? So it's a digital newsletter, obviously.
It's a digital newsletter. It just goes out by email.
Okay.
Yeah, and it has, you know what? If you want people to read the parish newsletter, you have to put cute pictures of kids in there as well. That's part of, I don't know if that was in your marketing school.
No, when I worked for Project Mexico last year, though, we were always working on newsletters.
Yeah.
And the more pictures that were in there, the better.
And very little text if possible.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you're going to get somebody to click on a link especially when they're in email mode, which is a different kind of mode, like Marco Polo mode. That's where we have all the time in the world when we're in Marco Polo mode. But when you're in email mode, people want things pretty quickly, I think.
That makes sense.
One thing I've started doing is I started a page on my church website of resources it's basically a repository of articles, podcasts, videos, things that I find helpful. And I'm kind of starting to sort it by category. I think I have 5 things on there right now, but I noticed that I was emailing to my church things over and over again, and I wanted people to have a way to go back and find it later. So my encouragement to you might be to just post the newsletters on your website.
Yeah.
So that if somebody reads one, they can go back and look at another one. You can start cross-referencing in a place where they can find them, because emails get lost, as we know, right? They disappear after some time.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, even trying to search them is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you could share, you and I are in the same youth workers Facebook group, and there's constant discussion of what are you guys doing? What's working? Have you found anything that continues to work, or do you find yourself constantly having to change to keep them engaged? You can only play games on Zoom for so long.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was really tough. And at first, we were kind of just doing our regular meetings, trying to convert that into a Zoom format, and it did not work. I also think with so many of them on online school, it's just really hard to engage them that way. Mm-hmm. So I would say our focus now, for as long as possible, is to do stuff outside, because our parish hall is closed at the order of the bishop. So we are obeying that completely. But outside, we have been blessed to do some distance activities. And we're meeting fewer times and trying to advertise to people exactly what we'll be doing.
Okay.
So, I've even just adding a little thing, we have done our evening prayers at the end of Soyo, and we do them by candlelight facing the chapel. And that feels pretty special. We play games with pool noodles, which are they're about 6 feet long.
Yeah.
So there's that. We've had
I remember seeing that in the CDC directives. Everybody must be one noodle apart.
Yes.
I remember reading that somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So there's more research, unfortunately, about, fortunately, surface contagion is possibly very much a long-lasting thing now. It sounds like. So we're sanitizing our hands and things like that. But we'll do sanitizing, and then we're whacking each other with pool noodle sword fights, jousting, that sort of thing.
I am also curious about for a lot of North America, we've got to kind of consider, if this continues, how are we going to do this outdoors?
Yeah. Yeah.
And not freeze the youth workers.
No, not really an option where I am.
That's hard for you, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I didn't even think about that. That has got to be harder.
Yeah. So have you started working on that yet? Or are you just kind of waiting until you're forced to deal with how freezing it is?
Just waiting.
Kick that can down the road. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've really only been doing outdoor church events since August. Mm-hmm. So I I have just packed this time, really. Like we have, so we have our first meeting of the Fellowship of St. Moses of the Black is coming up.
As a new chapter?
Yes.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yes.
Oh, to God.
It is exciting. So we're going to do that. We've had 3 hiking weekends. We have our library is actually coming. Take credit for this pretty much at all. I'm just doing a little kids activity, but our library has been doing some outdoor events as well. She brings a limited amount of books in plastic sleeves, and everything gets sanitized after it's been used. So we have our patronal feast coming up for St. Michael the Archangel, and we're going to do a little educational session on the angels, and that'll all be outside in the parking lot. So 3 hiking trips, Fellowship of St. Moses the Black. We are doing a Youth Equipped to Serve weekend as well. They have been working with us, kind of mentoring us over Zoom. And so they won't be traveling across the nation or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But to be totally honest, I'm really kind of excited about this format because the teenagers are taking initiative than they would have otherwise. So we're going to have a planning meeting together, and they'll really be coming up with a schedule of events for our day. And we'll probably visit one organization in Louisville that we can volunteer at safely. And we're going to do some service projects around the church, which I don't actually want to totally reveal here because they're surprises for our community. But we're going to do a little like beautifying and surprising. And so what would have been our St. Michael weekend, where the bishop comes to visit, we're going to have a few surprises in store for the greater parish community that weekend.
I do have some questions about young adults, but before that, I want to finish a couple things on the youth, or Soyo, as we call it in the Antiochian Archdiocese. I'm curious just a little bit about your structure. I always love to hear this so we can compare, like, how often are you meeting right now? What day a week? How long is your session?
Yeah.
I like the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, sure. So right now we are actually meeting as Soyo at large, which is not very large. I mean, I would say there's a minority of families really who are wanting to send their kids to outdoor.
I finished the death mask.
Sorry, he's asking punishment. Yes, he may. He finished the death mask episode. He's going to be on to the other treasures in Tutankhamun's grave.
All right.
What was I saying? Oh, the format. We are meeting once a week with Soyo at large. And when I say at large, it's not like these are super well attended, and then we're having an officer meeting once a month as well. So we're like every other week with Soyo, at least until things get cold. And then we'll see. I'm just kind of living in the moment right now, Deacon Adam. We'll have to see what we do virtually.
And what day a week are you meeting right now? And is that different from what you normally do?
We're doing the same Wednesday. Yeah. I think it would have been harder to change it. The weekends are kind of controversial for church stuff. It seems like some people love it. Church events on the weekends, like the Soyo events, and then some people don't because they say that's their family time. Some people like it because they don't have as many, as much pressure for school, homework, and things. So,
and is there also a corporate service for the congregation? What's going on at St. Michael?
Yeah. Yes. We still have 3 divine liturgies a week and Saturday Vespers. And that's all been blessed by the bishop in our reopening plan. So that's Tuesday morning. We have divine liturgy for immunocompromised and seniors. Thursday evening, we have a divine liturgy that's open. And Sunday morning, we have a divine liturgy. Saturday Vespers, we sanitize the pews afterwards. And we're still masking 6 feet apart. We have our own stalls in the pews. So,
so
you don't have the pool noodles in the church, do you?
No pool noodles in church.
That's probably a good choice.
Yeah.
I don't know. That might be the only way to keep social distance.
I can imagine, especially the adults playing with them more than the kids.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I went to the zoo, I loved the different spacing ideas. You said the noodles we went to the zoo and it said stay one wallaby away from each other. So I was like, okay, I can do that. So on young adults, what's the same? What's different? I think you might have a little bit more leeway with it, because they're adults and things are, different. So what's going on these days with them?
So I would say we're meeting more with them than we were in the past, because we used to have a lot of like huge all parish events. Like we had our choir concert, we had the Taste of St. Michael, and a lot of, our weekend where we welcome the bishop. So a lot of those huge corporate events, and we're talking like people really packed shoulder to shoulder. There's no way that we can do them safely right now. So those are not happening. So our young adults are now meeting about once a month. It's been hiking so far. The Fellowship of St. Moses the Black I think we'll have mostly young adults there, but that's geared towards other people. I mean, it's welcome, open to other people. So yeah, I don't know if I wouldn't say we have an exact format. We plan to pray in a caucus while we're there, do some goal setting, and maybe elect some officers, that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, we've covered like a lot of territory. I think I've answered most of my questions. Father Matthew?
No, I'm impressed at the level of activity that's going on, in spite of the restrictions. So it's a hard thing to navigate all across the board. And the need for connection is really important. I was talking to my parish council about it last week, and there were people emphasizing the need for fellowship. Like obviously the need for prayer, corporate prayer and liturgy is of utmost importance, but the liturgy after the liturgy that comes with the fellowship and that kind of connection, it's very, very important. So I'm glad that you're giving people an opportunity to still engage on some level with each other outside of the screen setting.
Yeah, me too. Thank God. And some people need it more than others. Like I was that kid that needed it because my family moved around a lot growing up. So I think that's actually part of why I feel this, calling so deeply to welcome everyone and kind of mother, children in the church who aren't my own, because that really got me through a lot of transitions when I was growing up. And, some of our families who are already well connected and have extended family in the city, they have come together and they're supporting one another. But Louisville's a growing city, and we do have quite a few people who just don't have the same kind of network. And, I think our mental health is part of our spiritual health, and it's a real consideration as well. So I think that, I'm just all for creating these win-win opportunities where, we follow medical advice and we feed each other emotionally and spiritually.
I want to make a reference here. We've talked about this probably several times on this broadcast, and you may have heard this also from Father Evan Armatos. I love repeating this over and over, but when Father Evan Armatos, pastor of St. Spiridon's in Loveland, Colorado, he's well known for, I think, spearheading the idea. I had never heard of it before him, so forgive me if it was your idea, not Father Evan's, but he basically said, make the first person you hire a youth director, not the church secretary. We can cover the church bulletin. We can return phone calls. Buy me a cell phone. Like, he's like, don't worry about the administration if we're skipping ministry. And so he really advocated, let's have a youth worker first. We'll figure out the secretarial stuff later. And it's very easy, I think, in our scenarios as priests, Father Matthew or Lindsey, you're involved in the leadership level, to let administration kind of take over all the work we're doing and forget like ministry needs to come first. And administration's good. Would it be organized? We want to be effective. But I just love that you're doing that. And I know that a lot of church incomes are down, but if you go through I'm not saying fire your church secretary, but if you go through a transition, you can, church secretaries move on, they retire, whatever, if you're going through a transition, really consider, should we try to have a youth worker for a little bit and see if we can get some volunteers to cover the office? I know of several churches where they have a different volunteer come in each day of the week. and they have their routine. I go in on Monday, Betty goes on Tuesday, and Mondays are always my Mondays, and I know what to do on Mondays, and only one person really does the bulletin. They do it on Thursdays, and it's really actually works, and people feel good about, they get to volunteer, make a difference. So there's ways to cover that. But as well as I know, and Father Matthew, and many of those in the audience, we got to put extra priority and extra emphasis into our youth, young adult, and family ministries. Mm-hmm. We have to invest in them and not get bogged down with administration.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to see what the bishops have in mind for next year. I hear they've declared it the year of the youth. Did you?
Yeah, that was exciting.
The Assembly of Bishops met last week and decided that 2021 will be the year of the youth. Yeah,
it's wonderful. Well, Lindsey, thanks for coming on. You gave me lots of ideas, and so I'm pretty excited. Father Matthew, as always, it's exciting. Do you want to say anything, Lindsey, before we close out?
No, it's good to be here, and I'm happy to continue to think creatively about how we can do this. I really think that there are lots of ways to engage families safely.
Lindsey, have you one last follow-up question? Have you heard of our Family Night booklet that is available from the Department of Missions and Evangelism?
I have heard of it, but I haven't looked at it.
Okay. So that totally fits in, because there are some, like, you're engaging some people, but not everyone. Yes. And what I've been picking up from you is that you are relying on parents to be more involved in the youth ministry, right? You are supporting their job as parents to take care of the youth. And the whole idea of the Family Night booklet that we put together a few years ago is to help parents who don't know how to bring the church into their home on a regular basis. So Deacon Adam's going to find the link. He's going to share the link in the comments. There it is. And it's a resource that parents can use as much of it or as little of it as they want. But the idea is, like, we really encourage families to set aside at least one night a week that's kind of sacred, that, like, you aren't making plans on this night. We're going to have dinner as a family. We're going to talk to each other. We're going to play a game together, turn off all the electronic devices, that kind of thing. So this is just one more arrow to put in your quiver, so to speak. Yeah. One more tool in the toolbox. And I hope you can, I know you'll be able to make really good use of it. But even in the midst of everyone trying to connect at the church through the activities you're doing, there's still some people, some families who won't be able to do that. Mm-hmm. And this is something for them too.
Right.
But my family started doing this a few years ago. And in one winter, I just would open up the Bible at dinner. So, like, okay, we're going to have dinner, and a couple nights a week, we're going to start reading through the Old Testament. And of course, I was very picky about what was being read. So we read through the Torah, and I didn't read everything from Genesis, and I didn't read through all the Levitical laws of Leviticus, but I hit the highlights, and the kids really loved it. So it can be very edifying. And even there are some people who are watching whose churches don't have as much going on as you do.
Yeah.
And so they're saying, well, what about us? We don't have a youth worker. We don't have all these things. The weather is not as good, whatever. Like, this is something for them too.
Yes. And I'll just encourage people to be the change, man. I know it's hard when you don't have the youth director at your church, but I have to say, like, part of my attraction to this job in Louisville is I was almost kind of doing it before. We'd invite lots of families out with us frequently. Uh-huh. So, just be brave enough to pop the question among your friends. The worst that can happen is they'll say no.
Yeah, you don't have to have a formal program to hang out with people and do good things with people.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great tidbit to finish out on. Thank you for mentioning that, Father Matthew. didn't even think how fitting that was for today's episode.
I kept waiting for you to like give the plug.
I just never thought of it. We still do. We're not as good on like a regular weekly basis, but my kids now are better at remembering than I am. They're like, "Hey, it's it's time to play games, time to do this," and I'm like, "Okay, great!" Like, and I get excited. I'm like, "Wow, they really want to spend time together." And the tidbit I had to learn was we actually took turns. If you have like kids, what helped them get interested really actually is we started taking turns on letting them pick what we're going to do. So they had an investment, like they cared. Yeah. So we did the official whole family night the way it is. And then you play with it and you say, okay, how do we make it work for our family?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right.
So that I think in the words of Shrek, that'll do, donkey. That'll do.
Yeah, that's it. Well, everybody loves parfait. Everybody loves parfait. That's all I'm gonna say.
I don't think parfait's on the Weight Watchers program.
It's not.
Right?
It's not.
So,
It's onions. Not everybody likes onions. But everybody likes parfait. All right,
Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.